Just for fun, try this one. Which floating structure did David Gilmour convert into a private recording studio? And here's another. What luxury item did David Gilmour auction off for over $21 million, donating every cent to climate activism? Think you know both? Type your guesses in the comments below. I'll reveal the answers in a bit. While you think them over, let me welcome you to The Versed, Masters of Music. I'm Dick Carlson. Today we're uncovering the quiet genius of David Gilmour, a man whose name is etched into rock history, but whose life story is even more profound. Stay tuned to see how this guitar icon quietly built a $180 million fortune, and why his lavish homes, boats, and cars barely scratch the surface of who he really is. But to truly understand David Gilmour, we need to go back to where it all began, because his early years hold pivotal moments you'll never believe. David Gilmour was born on March 6th, 1946 in Cambridge, England, a peaceful city surrounded by open skies and soft, rolling countryside. But he grew up in the nearby village of Grantchester, where his childhood was shaped by books, music, and quiet curiosity. His father, Douglas Gilmour, was a respected zoologist, and his mother, Sylvia, was a teacher and film editor. Both were academic, thoughtful, and supportive, so David grew up in a world full of ideas. But this world lacked privilege. His home wasn't fancy, but it was filled with something even more important, which was music and possibilities. As a teenager, David taught himself how to play guitar just by listening. He'd spend hours copying blues solos from old records, learning by ear and getting lost in the sounds of Elvis Presley, Lead Belly, and Hank Marvin. He never took formal lessons, but he practiced all the time. He focused on getting the right tone and feel, and that natural style would later become iconic. In those early years, David played in small local bands. The most well-known was Joker's Wild, where he started performing live around Cambridge. The shows were small and the pay was low, but they gave him experience, confidence, and real stage presence. Around this time, something important happened. David reconnected with an old school friend, Syd Barrett. They had gone to Cambridge High School for boys and shared a love for music and art. Syd was bold, creative, and full of wild ideas. They didn't know it yet, but their friendship would soon change music history. And it all started in those quiet streets of Grantchester, with two teenagers dreaming about sound and song. David's early life didn't look like a rock star's story, but behind the scenes, something powerful was growing. It was David's love for music, built on patience, curiosity, and pure passion. In 1967, everything changed. David was invited to join Pink Floyd, the rising psychedelic rock band led by his old schoolmate Syd Barrett. At first, he was brought in to support Syd, who was struggling with mental health issues and increasingly erratic behavior. But soon David stepped in fully, becoming the band's new lead guitarist and vocalist. At the time, David was still unsure whether this new role would last. Pink Floyd had a unique sound and direction that didn't immediately align with his blues-influenced guitar style. But instead of changing himself to fit the band, David leaned into what he did best, crafting melodies that felt human, grounded, and emotional. He brought structure to the chaos, turning sprawling ideas into cinematic songs. He also became a steadying presence inside the band. While egos clashed around him, David was calm, focused, and deeply committed to the music. That calmness would quietly anchor the band through its most creative and most turbulent years. From there, he didn't just play music, he shaped the future of it. As the band evolved, so did David's role. He wasn't loud or flashy, but in the studio he became the sonic architect behind some of rock's most legendary albums. His work on the 1973 album The Dark Side of the Moon helped it become one of the best-selling albums of all time. Then, with Wish You Were Here in 1975, he poured emotion into every note, especially the haunting tribute to Syd Barrett. And in The Wall in 1979, David's soaring solos gave voice to the band's most dramatic, emotional storytelling. His signature sound emerged as slow bends, lyrical phrasing, and tones that felt like pure emotion. He wasn't trying to impress, he was trying to express, and that made all the difference. While David grew as an artist, the relationships inside Pink Floyd grew tense. Creative control often clashed, especially between him and Roger Waters, the band's bassist and chief lyricist. As the band got bigger, so did the friction. But even during the conflict, David stayed focused on the music, always refining and perfecting, because he wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was chasing the sound, and quietly he was becoming one of the most respected guitarists in the world. By the mid-1880s, Roger Waters had left Pink Floyd, and David stepped up to lead the band forward. Under his direction, they released A Momentary Lapse of Reason in 1987, followed by The Division Bell in 1994. Both albums were major successes that proved Pink Floyd still had something powerful to say, even without its original lyricist. This new chapter also marked a turning point in David's lifestyle. He began collecting a few signature properties, starting with the Astoria, a beautiful 1911 houseboat moored on the River Thames. Instead of turning it into a luxury retreat, he converted it into a private recording studio where he would craft many of his future works. It was peaceful, isolated, and full of light, just the kind of place David preferred to work. He also purchased the grand Medmenham Abbey mansion in Buckinghamshire, and later a home in Little Venice, London. But while the addresses were luxurious, Gilmour kept things simple. His idea of indulgence was thoughtful, not flashy. He owned a classic Jaguar E-Type, but later he traded it for a Tesla Model S, a quiet, smooth, and environmentally responsible option. His favorite escape was sailing, because there's no paparazzi or red carpets, just open water and silence. In 1994, David married Polly Samson, a talented novelist and lyricist who would become not just his life partner, but his creative partner as well. The two blended their personal and artistic lives beautifully, and together they raised a large, loving family. A total of 8 children, some biological and some adopted. Polly brought a grounded sense of clarity to David's world. Her lyrical voice matched his musical tone. Together they created not just albums, but a way of living that made space for art, family, and stillness. She helped him step away from the noise and towards something much more meaningful. By the end of the 90s, David Gilmour had achieved something rare. He had become a rock legend, a multimillionaire, and a family man without losing the quiet sense of self that had shaped him from the start. While others chased fame, he chose something harder to hold on to, and it was peace. As the 2000s began, David turned more attention towards solo music and personal passions. In 2006, he released On an Island, a soft, reflective album filled with rich guitar work and emotional lyrics. It debuted at #1 in the UK, proving that even without the Pink Floyd name, David's music still spoke to millions. That was followed by Live in Gdansk in 2008, a powerful live performance that was praised around the world. His playing was as expressive as ever, full of space, feeling, and precision. In 2015, David released Rattle That Lock, a solo album that once again hit #1 in the UK. The record was bold, mature, and deeply personal, blending rock textures with lyrics co-written by Polly Samson. He followed it with a massive world tour, performing across Europe and North America. The tour grossed over $78 million, reminding fans just how powerful his presence still was, even decades after his first appearance with Pink Floyd. Meanwhile, David continued collecting some of the world's most iconic guitars. His personal arsenal included the legendary Black Strat, which shaped Floyd's greatest hits. It was a rare number 0001 Fender Stratocaster and vintage Martin acoustics. Each of his guitars was carefully restored, customized, and played. His properties also expanded. He spent much of his time between a peaceful Oxfordshire estate, complete with a private home studio and a beautifully restored seafront home in Hove. He loved quiet routines and spending time with his wife, Polly, and their children. His lifestyle wasn't about showing off, it was about finding balance. That balance extended to how he used his wealth. In 2019, David stunned the world by auctioning off over 120 guitars from his collection, including the Black Strat. The auction raised over $21.5 million, and he donated every dollar to Client Earth, an environmental charity fighting climate change. But he didn't stop there. He later sold his London home and gave the full proceeds, which were several million pounds, to Crisis, a UK charity that supports people experiencing homelessness. Later, David also became vice president of Crisis and regularly supported Oxfam, Greenpeace, and Amnesty International. By this time, he was no longer just a guitarist. He became a respected philanthropist who used his success to quietly make a real difference. As the decade turned and David entered his late 70s, he released Luck and Strange in 2024. It was his most introspective album yet. The songs explored aging, memory, and meaning, offering a window into his thoughts and reflections at nearly 80 years old. It was subtle, honest, and beautifully crafted. At the same time, big changes were happening behind the scenes. The Pink Floyd music catalog was sold to Sony Music for a reported $400 million. Gilmour's share was estimated at around $80 to $100 million, further boosting his already impressive fortune. Today, David Gilmour's net worth sits at around $180 million, but you'd never guess it by looking at his life. He still lives quietly in his Hove mansion and spends time at his Oxfordshire countryside estate where he records in peace. His beloved Astoria houseboat studio remains active as a creative sanctuary moored on the River Thames. His daily routines are simple. He sails his 35-foot yacht, gardens with his wife Polly, and makes music when inspiration strikes. And he avoids the spotlight, skips the drama, and keeps his focus on what matters, which is his family, peace, and purpose. His wealth is managed quietly with minimalist luxury and maximum impact. No hype or noise, just a lifetime of work, generosity, and timeless sound. David Gilmour is a rare paradox, a global guitar icon who never chased the spotlight. While the world called him a legend, he simply called himself a musician. He never sought fame, he just followed the music. His life is a quiet masterpiece, a story of balance between sound and silence, between great wealth and even greater generosity, between fame and deep personal reflection. Where other rock stars sought spotlight, David spent decades refining subtle mastery. A single note from his guitar could say more than a wall of noise. And behind that tone was a man who valued peace over power and purpose over praise. Today, his music still echoes in stadiums, headphones, and memories, not because he shouted to be heard, but because he played honestly, and people felt it. David Gilmour isn't just part of rock history. He's a reminder that quiet power can last forever. His guitar changed the sound of rock forever. But David's real story goes far beyond the music. It's about the power of restraint, the strength of quiet choices, and the lasting grace of a man who found peace in a world built on noise. What part of David's journey spoke to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still riding the echo of this story, stick around. Another legend's journey is just around the corner.